Hello and welcome to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. We get curious about all things gender, sex, and sexuality, as well as relationships, feminism, the inclusive kind, mental health and kink, and all that makes us humans unique and diverse. From body positivity to body dysmorphia, it's all welcome here. Come with us on a journey of inclusion, acceptance, and respect. I'm your host, Esther Lemons. I identify as a cisgender woman, and my pronouns are she and her. In this episode, I have a conversation with JARETH NEBULA, a multifaceted transgender creature who dabbles in multiple types of artistic expression and crafting, and is also a professional model. JARETH's pronouns are he, him. He is transgender and also likes to use the labels Agender Flux, demiboy, and alien. Find out what that means to JARETH in this episode. We also talk about the nuances of gender labels, the differences between gender identity and gender expression, modeling before and after coming out as transgender, what we've made masculine and feminine mean, and turning yourself into a walking piece of art. Please be aware that we talk about extreme body modification and surgery in this episode. The video JARETH mentions can be found on the podcast page 50shadesofgender.com/JARETH. It was recorded on the 22nd of February 2021. Now let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome. What's your name?
Hi, my name is JARETH NEBULA.
Hi, JARETH. And how do you identify?
I have a couple of labels that I like to use, and
Mhm.
some of them are similar, but they all kind of stand alone, or have like a standalone definition, I guess. I am
Mhm.
transgender, agender flux, demiboy, and alien.
I love it. And I would love to ask you about all those and what they mean to you. Where would you like to start?
Well, I guess with the agender flux because it's kind of a
Okay.
newer terminology.
That's the first time I've come across it, actually. So, yeah, what does it mean to you?
So agender flux is it means that the person identifies with no particular gender, but fluctuates with having a base gender. So, like,
Mm.
an agender flux person could be like partially one gender or no gender, but they have like okay, so it starts with zero and then it ends up with like 100 essentially. So like
Okay.
mine is demi boy, which means that I am mostly agender because of the agender flux, but because of
Hmm.
the demi boy, I am a base boy and I'm boy part of the time, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
a little bit
Yeah.
much to explain like all of it, but
Yeah.
and it cuz it does have different definitions depending on where you read about it. But for me, that's
Mhm.
kind of the definition.
Okay. And are these terms that you have adopted quite recently? I mean, how has that journey been for you to get to these, not the destination as such, because obviously it varies, and things develop, don't they? But how have you ended up with Agender Flux and Demi Boy right now?
I have recently adopted the Agender Flux because I just discovered it.
Mm.
The Demi Boy identity or part of my identity, I have had that one for a while. I
Hmm.
feel like that one has always been kind of accurate just because I'm not a boy, but I am part of the time. And it
Hmm.
kind of helps to have that as a marker for my identity. And the
Hmm.
agender flux is more recent because I do identify as agender most of the time. So that kind of ties in with the alien gender as well. And the
Mm.
alien gender, I've identified as alien for many, many, many years. Even before coming out as transgender, I
Ah.
would call myself an alien. So it's just kind of always been there. It's even before I knew that that was like a way that you could identify as a gender, it was there.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about that actually. So, what makes you resonate with that term?
The alien part?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, my whole life, I've felt like an outsider. I have always been the weird kid. I've always been the outcast, like every part of my life. When I was growing up, I didn't have any friends. I didn't have we my family moved to this small town and there were like we were the only people that weren't related to anyone and there was only like 22 people in my grade and it was very small. So, I was
Mhm.
an outsider. We were all like my whole family was like outsiders, and then we moved to another small town, and I went to high school there, and I was always the weird kid. I wore rabbit ears to high school. I was very weird, and
I love it.
yeah, so I've always resonated with that, with just being an alien, because I feel like I've always felt like an outsider, as well as
Mm.
people treating me like an outsider. So
Mhm.
even in the alternative communities and the goth scenes and like most subcultures that I've participated in, I've been the weirdo. Like, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter what group I'm in, I'm always the one that's like, I don't wanna be like everybody else, I guess. It also kinda ties into that, so
Mhm.
I embrace the alien part of me, more than anything else.
Mm. Yeah, I love that really because I can relate to the outsider bit. I've kind of always felt like an outsider myself, but I'd never really sought to identify as an alien, though. I wonder if I'd had that opportunity years ago, if I'd have, adopted that term. I don't know. We guess we'll never know, but there you go. Yeah. How was that growing up? Was it obviously being an outsider? It's kind of like I feel it can have its challenges, obviously, with making friends and obviously not being accepted and stuff. But it sounds like you're also happy in that identity, and like you say, you don't want to be like anyone else.
Yeah, I embraced being the weirdo.
Mm.
It helped me a lot, I think, because when you deal with being on the spectrum or having autism of any kind, like, you already think and process differently. So
Hmm.
you kind of are just, out there anyway.
Yeah.
And it helps to have something that you can embrace, to be like, not necessarily a label, but just have something that you can like call your own, and, you know,
Hmm.
share it with the world, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like you've found your people now? Do you have like friends and people that I don't know, that you feel get you?
Yeah, and yes, for yes. The easy answer is yes.
Okay.
I have to say that when it comes to the alien part of my identity, I have actually found people from multiple different communities, actually, because the alien part of my
Mm.
identity is not just my gender. It is like everything. It encompasses a lot more than just my gender. My disabilities make me feel like I am an alien as well, because I don't have a body that works properly like a normal human, quote unquote, body does. I mean,
Right.
yes, I understand I'm in a human body, but the things that my body doesn't really like line up. So when I reached out to the Ehlers-Danlos EDS community, that's the main disability that I have, is Ehlers-Danlos
Hmm.
syndrome.
Hmm.
When I became a part of that community and then my video came out, a lot of people in the EDS community actually identify as alien as well.
Really interesting.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of them do. And it is very common in communities where people have autism spectrum as well. So
Mm.
there's a lot of tie-ins for like different communities in and the alien gender, and I have found that I relate more to people in the alien part of the communities that I've belonged to, more than anything else.
Mm. Hmm.
Um,
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah.
yeah, and I also like have quite a bit of friends that are on the spectrum as well now.
Hmm.
So
Hmm. Yeah. I had a conversation recently with someone. They said that being on the autistic spectrum is more common with gender non-conforming people as well as the other way round. Something along those lines. Yeah.
there's a lot
Um,
of connection for sure. I
mm,
wouldn't say that one
yeah.
causes the other or anything like that, but
Right.
there is
Yeah.
definitely some crossover. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
find that the people that have both of those labels are I relate to them a lot more. So
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. So, how have you? You mentioned, obviously, I'm not just asking this out of the blue because that might be a bit rude, but you mentioned about being heavily body modified, and I would love to sort of hear more about, the changes you've made to your body.
yeah, so I have a lot of tattoos. I have scarifications, I have
Hmm.
piercings, and I have also had top surgery. So I have had a double mastectomy and had both my nipples removed.
Hmm.
My scars are a little bit different than everybody else's. They're not the under bust area. It is actually like a line that's diagonal across my chest. So
Ah,
the scars look
interesting.
different as well.
Is that something that was intentional? Is that something you
Yes.
requested, perhaps? Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
actually had to beg them to do it. There
Really?
was a
Wow.
lot of issues. I mean, well, they basically warned me that if I did it that way, that the healing would be different, and they were
Okay.
correct. I don't regret it or anything, but I
Mm,
definitely would have probably done a little bit more research if I had the time. But I did it very
mm,
quickly.
right. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So, what made you want to remove your nipples?
I have always had a disconnect with my chest, and
Hmm.
the nipples were like a huge part of it. Having them removed, having my breasts removed and having my nipples removed was actually the best thing I've ever done for my dysphoria.
Wow.
Yeah, it helped more than anything. It was a huge point of discomfort for me,
Hmm.
and having my nipples removed made me feel more doll-like as well.
Ah, yeah.
So that helped because I do have doll joint tattoos, and I have always kind of like related to the label of doll. I like being called a doll. That's like the only feminine term that I really like.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So that comes into your art as well, doesn't it?
Yes, most definitely.
Yeah. How did you get into that? Tell us a
Into
bit more
what?
about your art, anyway. Like the art you make and the even the tattoos you have, like the doll joints. What made you do that?
I have been into dolls my entire life. I
Hmm.
have been into art my entire life. Both of my parents are artists.
Hmm.
They owned a ceramic business, they owned jewelry business. They've done pretty much my parents do everything that you can think of as far as art goes. But they obviously have their specialties and things, but I
Hmm.
was born an artist essentially. There was no other I didn't have a choice. I started drawing and painting as soon as I could pick up a pencil and paintbrush and using my fingers and I started sculpting and using different mediums and everything when I was a kid. They had ceramics my whole life. So, I painted
Mm.
ceramics and all that. But as far as tying in my art to my body modifications, I wanted to turn myself into a walking piece of art. And I know that a
Mm.
lot of people do that with their tattoos, but mine are a cohesive story, well, at
Mm.
least to me anyway.
Yeah.
I turned myself into a doll because I have my doll joints. They are on all of my joints. I have
Mm.
72 stars all over my body, and
Mm.
I have like the element of silver from the periodic table on my right
Yeah.
arm.
Mm.
I'm
Yeah.
very into chemistry. I think it's very fascinating, and
It is.
also
Yeah.
alchemy. I love alchemy, so
Hmm.
uh, silver is a huge proponent in alchemy. So, um,
Hmm.
anyway, I'm going on a tangent here.
No, that's all good. Do you think that you will have more tattoos, more modifications? How do you see that developing? Or do you feel like you're kind of happy where things are at the moment?
Oh, I'm absolutely getting more body modifications. I
Eh.
am going to get up to 333 stars on my body, so I'm gonna have, like, a
Yay.
whole I'm working on designing and planning out a whole chest and throat piece to cover up my scars and my, chest so that I can feel more comfortable with showing it off.
Mhm.
I really want to get my ears pointed, but I don't know if that is in my budget, at any point in my life because it's
Wow, yeah.
expensive.
Is it?
And
Mm.
there's like quite a few other things that I've, tossed around in my head about, different plastic surgeries that I want. And I want to get
Mhm.
surgery to make my face more masculine.
Mhm.
I have like quite a few other tattoos that I want to get, but they're all kind of in the working stages because I don't want the story of my tattoos to fade. I don't want to have like a nice pun there. I don't want to have my I don't want to have anything random. I want it all to be part of the whole message so that I have more magic in what I'm creating as like who is Jareth aesthetically.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, I love that. Wow. So tell me about your art as your what you're working on at the moment. You make things like collars, like spiked collars and things. How did you get into that?
I make a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I'm a jack of all trades. I love crafting and I love art
Mhm.
and I dabble in pretty much everything you can think of. I customize dolls, I paint them, I make everything you can think of for them. I make doll jewelry. I even make spiked collars and spiked bracelets for dolls. So they're like
Mhm.
these little tiny things.
Oh.
um, I make well, I just started doing digital art as well, but I started making collars specifically because I have a huge collection of them and
Mhm.
I wanted to add to that. I wanted to have more of them without having
Mhm.
to pay over $100 each time. And also, I just love the aesthetic of spiked collars. Everything
Mhm.
about it makes me happy. So having it everywhere in my life is pretty fantastic.
Yeah. I saw some of the pictures actually. I love the really the bright, is it sort of the glow in the dark ones with the sparkly bits in it? Oh my god, they're so amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I like to have my spikes unique because there's a lot of collar artists coming out there. There's
Mm.
more and more of us appearing, and
Mhm.
so I want to stand out, and one of the things that makes my art stand out is using glow in the dark pigments. I
Mhm.
use it's glow in the dark and UV obviously because
Yeah.
they go together, and it makes me really happy because then I can also create rave accessories because like I'm a huge raver, so that even though
Yeah.
raves aren't happening right now, it's still nice to create little accessories that people can wear to their little in-home raves that they make.
Right? Yeah. Raven on Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Not
Raving
quite
on
the same.
Zoom.
Not quite the same, but still, you can dress up then. You can definitely dress
Exactly.
up. Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned your parents and moving around a bit and stuff. How have your parents been with your gender journey?
That's a very complex question. My
Okay.
parents are kind of distant in my life, and they
Okay.
don't really understand a lot of the like sub identities. They understand transgender as much as they can because they're old.
Hmm.
Um, but they just kind of let me do whatever makes me happy. But they're not really in my life anyways. So like
Okay.
I don't talk to my dad very often. Like we text each other very infrequently, and I
Hmm.
talk to my mom once a week, and I text her. It's like they have a lot to deal with right now. My little sister lives with them with a 4 or 5 year old, so they
Mm.
pretty much have their hands full, and I don't want to intrude, so I just kind of stay in the distance.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And they use I use he him pronouns. I
Hmm.
do because of the fact that I am a demiboy. I do let my family just kind of see me as a boy. It's much easier that way to kind of let society just see me as a boy and
Mm.
to kind of have that part of my identity be what people see the most. Like for when I'm working,
Mm.
for example, when I work, I just tell people that I'm a guy and it works because I don't want people to, because transgender is my, you know, I am trans. So I, I'm, I don't like it when people obviously use female or she, her pronouns or any other like femme pronouns.
Mhm.
I'm becoming okay with they, them, but I prefer he, him. It's they,
Mhm.
them is something that's starting to grow on me, even though in the past I've told people not to use it because he, him is more accurate.
Mhm.
But I don't know, in the
Yeah.
recent weeks, I've been exploring the idea of being able to take both.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So, how do you feel for yourself about the term non binary or the label non binary?
I guess if you get down to the brass taxes of like what I identify as, most of them are in the non-binary umbrella bracket. So
Mm.
I don't call myself non-binary,
Mhm.
but I definitely understand that every label that I use kind of falls into that as non-binary because I'm not
Mm.
binary. Only part of it is, and it because agender flux is a non-binary
Mm.
identity, and
Yeah.
so is demiboy. So
Mhm.
and so is alien. So it's kind of like they're all non-binary labels, but I don't use the
Yeah.
term non-binary.
Because the terms you have, I guess, are more specific, so they would feel more aligned. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
I
Okay.
prefer That's why I have multiple labels is because it's more specific and so people kind of understand a little bit more of the dynamic that is my gender because my gender is
Mm.
very complex. It is not simple. It is not just a one to one or, I jumped from being girl to boy. Like it's not like that.
Mm.
It's very complex and,
Mm.
having multiple labels helps a lot for me and
Mm.
my brain and for other people to kind of understand where I stand in my gender.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you say a bit more about the complexity of your gender? Is there anything you haven't said yet that you would like to add about that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. One thing that I like to tell people or that I'd like to share is that gender is not the same for everybody at every given moment. So, like,
Mm.
for example, because I'm flux, like agender flux, like my
Mhm.
gender is not the same every given moment. So sometimes I'm more boy than I am agender, and sometimes I'm more agender or alien than I am boy or demi boy. So
Mhm.
it's, all over the place. And I definitely don't think that gender is the same, like it's not constant. It is all over the place for everyone. I think that gender is fluctuating and gender is all different. Like so
Mm.
some for example, I'm totally not having a easy time talking about this. So for example, someone could be a different gender at 15 than they would be at 18 or 25 or
Mm.
30, so a
Yeah.
gender doesn't stay the same for somebody throughout their entire life. It could change. It's fluctuating. And that
Mm.
happens to everybody, not even just transgender people. I've met people that are cis that go from being cis to non-binary to trans and then back to cis because they explored that part of them and then realized that that was just a part of their life, that they were only trans part of their life. They aren't trans their entire lives. And I feel like
Mm.
a lot of the time people forget that that happens. Like,
Mhm.
and people are like, "Oh, that's trending or whatever, faking it." And it's like, "Well, no, actually people are not one, like it's not, some people are, like some people are this same gender when they're 3 as when they're like 50. That does
Mm.
happen, but gender isn't going to stay constant like
Mm.
that. I feel like for the most part, it's fluctuating, especially for
Mm.
trans people. I don't know. Maybe that's just my experience and what I've seen with people I know.
That's
Um,
fair. Yeah, yeah. Well, it makes sense to me in a way that I feel like I've changed as a person a lot, over the years. Although I would say I'm cisgender, the way I see gender has changed. So I don't question my gender as such, but I do question gender as a construct and as a subject. It's like the more you look into it, the more mysterious it becomes. Like the more questions you have. That's what I've been finding. So yeah, and I think it's also about like what it represents and how it affects your place in society and all sorts of things. It's a real, to be honest, it's a real minefield. To be fair, I
Absolutely.
find,
That's
yeah.
that's exactly what I mean. Everything that you just
Mm,
said goes along with how I feel gender
mm,
is, because like that makes total sense.
mm,
Having
mm,
gender be changing depending on how you see it, how society views it, how they treat it, and a person's gender could change based on like what, because like if a person doesn't understand transgenderism and then they at some point end up learning about it and then realizing that that is who they are, that
mm,
changes a person. So,
mhm,
sometimes understanding a gender makes it like it makes it clicks in your brain and you're like, "Oh shoot, that's me."
mm.
That kind of realization also helps,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
yeah, it goes along with what I was saying.
Mhm, mhm. That's cool.
And
Yeah, I'm glad
and
I'm
what you
glad
were
that makes
saying.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
I'm glad that makes sense. Yeah, yeah. So how does your agender flux, for example, how does it affect, or all your labels to be fair, how does it affect how you express your gender and your identity?
I view gender identity separate
Mhm,
than gender expression. I think that the people kind of squish all of the alternative, like for example, people squish gender and sexuality together. They think it's the
mm,
same thing, or gender expression and gender identity. Like all three
mm,
of those things are separate. And for example, for me specifically, my gender expression is just all over the place. I wear a lot of color, and that is not really a typical masculine thing.
mm,
And I do wear a lot of goth clothes too. And when I do, it's more on the femme leaning side.
mhm,
So I am, I guess, the best way to describe how I dress and my expression is androgynous, but
mm,
I also tie in very heavily masculine and feminine aesthetics. Like, for example, I'll fill in my mustache and use masculine contouring when I do my makeup so that I look more masculine when I'm wearing makeup. And
mhm.
I will also, I wear pants mostly, and not that that's like a masculine thing, but you know what I mean.
Not these days, right? Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. But, it's just I try to use a little bit of both elements as far as masculine and feminine goes,
Mm.
because I wear whatever I wanna wear. I guess is the
Mm,
easiest way to describe it. I wear whatever I'm feeling that day, and just
mm.
I I wear more comfortable clothes now than I ever have. I guess when you're almost 35, it's probably time to start like wearing comfortable pants and comfortable shirts instead of wearing raver and J fashion things where you have 15 billion things on your head. It's a lot more comfortable to just be casual, I guess, and I understand that now, but I still wear weird stuff, like Lisa Frank leggings and underneath my bright blue Dickies, and it's like, I
Yeah, I'm all about the comfortable clothes, to be fair, but it's nice to, you know, do something different, I guess, sometimes, for sure.
yeah, I dress up for photo shoots and for taking
Mm,
selfies and around the house, but, with what's
Mm.
going on with the world right now, it's difficult to we don't have anywhere to dress up and go to, so we just have to dress up
Right.
at home, and when I'm at work,
Yeah,
I'm just wanna be as comfortable as possible, so I just wear
totally.
comfortable crap, you know?
Yeah. I know what you mean. Like I work from home and basically I just wear my PJs all day, every day. Yeah, pretty
Heck
much.
yes. I love
Yeah,
PJs.
PJs are the best. Yeah. Yeah. So do you you mentioned photos. I've seen some of your photos. They're amazing. So you are a model as well?
Yes, that
Mhm.
is a oh, man. So, I have been modeling most of my life. I've been well, at this point, I've been modeling since I was 16,
Mhm.
so 19 years.
Wow.
I was
Yeah.
a professional, I did runway, I got paid, I was with agencies when I was younger, as a
Mm.
teenager, so 16 to, like, 19 or something like that. I was with, like, some agencies in Portland, and I did runway because 'cause I'm tall, and
Mhm.
I have actually I continued doing modeling
Mhm.
after I came out as transgender. So I was a model pre-transition. So as presenting as female, I was a model and
Mhm.
got printed in a couple of magazines, and I'm on the cover of a book because of
Ah.
stock photos and all this other stuff. And
Oh, wow.
it's a
Yeah.
huge part of my life. It was actually what people would consider a career choice. However, when you choose a career that you don't get paid for and you spend almost 20 years of your life dedicated to it, it becomes very difficult when that entire industry doesn't pay you for your time.
Mm.
But,
Wow. Yeah.
hey, at least I'm printed in magazines, and recently, I just got on the back cover of another magazine. I've been on the cover of a magazine before, but this
Mhm.
time it was on the back cover, but it was, still awesome because it's a cover. Who cares if it's on the back or not? People look at both
Right.
sides, so, you know,
Yeah.
I modeling is something I don't think I could ever stop doing because it's such a huge part of my identity. Like, it makes me happy. It's one of the only things in my life that make me truly happy, and
Mm.
I love doing it even though it costs money to do it at this point
Mm.
because you have to you have to have the right outfits, you have to pay for all that stuff, and
Mm.
then you sometimes have to pay for studios, and at this point I just do shoots for publication. Like, I work with local photographers, and we submit our shoots and sets to magazines.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. So, how would you say your modeling has evolved as your gender journey has evolved?
After I came out as transgender, it was a really huge struggle to get back into the modeling industry because the
Mm.
modeling industry is very binary, and they don't really
Mm.
it's changing now, but in recent years, but for the most part they're not into transgender folks. So it was a challenge starting off when I came out 5 years ago,
Mm.
or actually 6 years, almost 6 years at this point. And after coming out, I had to present as masculine as possible to have people take me seriously. And
Right.
it was not comfortable for me because I'm not comfortable being super duper masculine.
Mm.
My aesthetic has changed over the years, obviously, and has
Mm.
evolved. And now, as a model who is transgender, I just present as androgynous as possible and kind of, you know, push the boundaries on what that means. Like, I'll wear a wig, but I will wear a mustache, or, that kind of thing. Like, I'll just kind of pull and from both sides and try my best to create a look that is cohesive. And
Mm.
I find it much easier to present androgynous than trying to do either masculine or feminine because, like, I mean, as a whole, like, I kind of pull from both sides, obviously, just to make it easier. But
Yeah.
with photographers, like, my posing is, on the feminine side just because that's what I'm used to. And
Mhm.
so, like, a lot of the time my poses will be more feminine, but when it comes to male models, their posing is very boring anyway, so it works for my advantage.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah. What would you say masculine and feminine mean to you?
Oh gosh, that's a complex question. I
Mm,
think that they are fluid. I know that sounds silly because like, gender is or I think the gender is a construct. I think it's made up, and I
mm,
don't think that things are inherently masculine or feminine, but as a society we have made them as such. We have put things in categories to make them masculine or feminine.
mhm,
And so, therefore, our programming thinks of things as masculine or feminine based on what society has told us. So, we do have programming that
mm.
puts things into categories like that. So, I guess there are some things that are masculine and feminine in my brain, even though I know deep in my heart that they aren't necessarily that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does make sense actually. I've been thinking about that in a way of we can assign gender to just characteristics, right? So why is it feminine to be nourishing? Why can't it just be nourishing? Why does it have to be feminine or masculine? And like being fierce, is normally considered masculine perhaps. But then, I mean, it kind of is weird when you think about it because they're just facets, they're characteristics, they're I don't know what else to call it really. But like I'm thinking, why do they have to be gendered specifically?
Exactly, and it changes depending on what culture you're in too. So,
Mm,
you know,
exactly.
people all are different all over the world, and a lot of the time people are like, "Oh, this is masculine." It's like, well, in some cultures that's actually feminine. So, it's
Mm,
really like that breaks down to back to being a construct. It's made up.
mhm,
It's all made up, and we all, that's why I try to play with it a lot and I push the boundaries a lot because I don't
mhm,
think that people should, take it so seriously. It is a thing that helps in some ways, but at the same time, people like, I don't know. I guess I just want people to not take it so seriously.
oh, yeah, totally. Ideally, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add or say that we haven't talked about yet?
Hmm. I guess not really. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to talk more about all this because it talking about my gender and talking about just all of the constructs that we have and
Mm,
being trans and all that is it's good to get it out there because I feel like when people hear about that and then it resonates with them, it makes people feel less alone. And it's really important for humanoids to feel less alone because
yeah.
we all need community. We all need each other, and the more that we separate each other and put ourselves into like us versus them, we are separating ourselves even more. And I understand that like sometimes having multiple labels makes it hard for people to like want to get close to me or be like take me seriously, I guess. I
Mm,
don't use it for other people except for the people that it resonates with because those are the people that it matters to.
mm.
And I
Yeah, for
use it
sure.
for myself. Like, I use my labels for myself so that I can kind of have a general, I don't know, feeling of belonging to something, I guess.
Mm, yeah. And whether you're human or alien, we all want to belong, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, I
totally.
wanna be different, but I also wanna be a part of a community.
Yeah,
It's complicated because like, I wanna
yeah.
be I like being the weird, complex alien in the corner that everybody talks to, but has awkward conversations because of being on the spectrum?
Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean, though. It is a lot of the time we're just taught to fit in and conform, and I think that just gets so I don't know, it just feels so wrong, really. So I think we all, or a lot of people, come to the conclusion of they just want to belong to a tribe of people who get them,
Absolutely. If I had a
Yeah,
tribe of alien humanoids, I would be happy, and I feel like sometimes I have that
that's
already.
great. Yeah. I love it.
Whenever I talk about being an alien on social media, people are always like, "Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too." And it's becoming more common, and that makes me very happy because that means that a lot more people are becoming okay with themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yes. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I think that's pretty much it actually, because
Mm.
I can't think of anything that I want to add, but I also really enjoyed the content that we went
Oh,
over.
good. Yeah, me too. It's fascinating. And I've got a demi girl on the podcast already, Kit, who's in episode 1 and 12, I believe. And now I have a demi boy, which is really pleasing to me. So now I can add that to the list.
Nice. I'm glad that I can
Yeah,
help with your list, and
yeah.
I enjoy doing podcasts and talking even though I'm awkward.
I feel pretty awkward myself, to be fair, because sometimes I just end up stumbling over my words. And then at times I listen back and I think, oh my God, do I still have to say, how often do I say wow? And I'm just not, I think maybe I need to vary my vocabulary a bit more. But there you go, I'll get there.
Hey, we all have improvements that we need to make.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much for talking to me about all this.
Yeah,
That's been so
absolutely.
interesting. Yay.
Thank you for having me. This means a lot to me to spread the
Oh.
word of, you know, bringing more light to the information that I have to share.
Yeah, yeah. I really I appreciate it so much, and it's just I learn so much from every person, and everyone is so different, so different. It's amazing. It's really amazing. Yeah, yeah. You can find out more details on the website at 50shadesofgender.com/Jareth, where you can also read the transcript. And you can find Jareth on Facebook at Jareth Nebula Boy, on Instagram at Jareth_Nebula, and on TikTok at Jareth Nebula. His business is called Nebulous Novelties, which you can find on nebulousnovelties.com as well as on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for listening to the 50 Shades of Gender podcast. You can find us online at 50shadesofgender.com and on social media. If you'd like to support us, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Plans start from only $1 a month. Visit patreon.com/50 Shades of Gender for more details. We hope you will listen again. Until then, stay curious and open minded.
Oh man, I'm sorry. I went on a tangent there and I didn't
That's
answer the
okay.
question.
No,
Can,
please
can
feel
we
free to
start over
continue.
that one?
Of course, yeah, if you want to, feel
Okay.
free. Yeah.
All right. I'm bad at this. What was the question again?